da Agencia Internacional de Energía. Nos vamos a esperar más unos 5 minutos para permitir que lleguen todas las personas. Gracias. Buenos días, señoras y señores. Bienvenidos a la webinar sobre el mercado global de eficiencia energética, una publicación anual de Agencia Internacional de Energía. Nos vamos a esperar más 5 minutos para permitir que lleguen todas las personas. Gracias. Good morning. Welcome and thank you for joining this webinar on IEA's Energy Efficiency Market Report, which covers global market trends and prospects. This webinar is organized by the International Energy Agency with the kind support of the Secretaría de Energía, CENER. My name is David Morgado, and I'll be the moderator for this session. Together with me is my colleague Tyler Bryant. He's from the IEA's Energy Efficiency Unit, and he's the manager of the IEA's Energy Efficiency Market Reports. And he'll be carrying out the main presentation. It's important to refer that the basis for this webinar is an annual publication produced by the International Energy Agency, which is available online on our website for download, and it's in English only. In terms of the agenda for today, so you can see here Tyler and me, and the agenda for today is I'll do a brief introduction on the webinar. There'll be some welcome remarks by Santiago Cujeras, who's the Director General for Efficiency and Energy Sustainability at CENER. And then Tyler will be doing his presentation and covering several points, including why do a market report on energy efficiency, highlights of the energy efficiency market report for 2014, status of the global energy efficiency market, how energy efficiency compares with other energy sources, status of energy efficiency finance, and we'll just go through some of the case studies that are available in the report on China, European Union, and also a regional in Asia. And then we'll briefly talk about the energy efficiency market report for 2015, which includes a chapter on Mexico. And finally, we'll have some time for Q&A and discussions so that we have your contributions. We would very much like to hear from you and like to include your voice in the conversation. So please ask questions and share comments so that we can discuss these at the end of the webinar. To do so, before we start the webinar, we'd like to go through the setup of the webinar and let you know how you can participate in today's session. The slide shows you an example of the attendee interface. You should see something like that looks like this on your computer. You have joined today's webinar either listening through your computer speaker system by default. This means if you usually can hear music on your computer, you'll be able to hear the presentation. If you'd like to call in using the telephone, you'll just locate your audio pane and select Use Telephone. The dial-in information access code will then be displayed, which you can see here, the number and the access code. And it's a free toll for Mexico, so it's a free telephone number. You also have the ability to ask questions using the questions pane, as you see here. Simply type in your question, whether it's in English or Spanish, and then click send. And we'll make sure at the end of the presentation to include them in the Q&A session. We can also take questions during the session using the hand-raising option to allow you to speak if you have a microphone or are dialing in through the telephone. Please note that we'll be recording the webinar, and we'll make a link available for those who have missed the webinar, as well as if you want to share it with your colleagues or would like to go through it again. So if there's no questions at this time, I'll proceed with an introduction speech by Santiago Cujeres, Director General of Efficiency and Energy Sustainability at CENER.
Hola, muy buenos días. Good morning. Yes, good morning. Buenos días. ¿Me pueden escuchar?
Perfect.
Okay, all right. I hope ¿Me pueden escuchar? Sí.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Okay, great. Okay, good morning everyone. On behalf of the Ministry of Energy, it's a great pleasure to welcome all of you to this webinar. As I have told you in the past webinars, it's a great pleasure for Mexico to be one of the first countries trying to develop energy efficiency using webinars with the support of the International Energy Agency. And well, this one is about the energy efficiency market report. I would like to tell you that we have a record number of registered people for this webinar, which is great. That means that the success of using this tool for increasing energy efficiency is developing very much here in Mexico, and the number of people attending these webinars and the awareness of using this tool is also increasing, which is great. Specifically, and before I pass it on to David and Tyler, I would like to thank both of you for making sure that this webinar is in place. This energy efficiency market report estimates that investment in energy efficiency markets worldwide in 2012 was between 310 billion and 360 billion. This is a huge number. Investment in energy efficiency was larger than supply side investment in renewable electricity or in coal, oil and gas electricity generation, and around half the size of upstream oil and gas investment. Investment in energy efficiency is distributed unevenly across different countries. and energy-consuming sectors, including buildings, domestic appliances, transport, and industry. I know that Tyler is going to talk about the highlights in a few minutes, but I want to mention that one of the highlights of this report, and Mexico really supports this idea, is that energy efficiency finance is expanding and innovating. We want to mention that Mexico and France have developed an energy efficiency finance initiative that it's within the G20 energy efficiency action plan, and hopefully before the end of this year we will have guidelines in these regards. So with that, once again, I would like to thank all of you for participating. I would like to thank the International Energy Agency for having this webinar, especially for Mexican participants, and I would like to thank David and Tyler for all of the effort and everything they have done, and also Ana Lepur, who is the International Energy Agency representative here in Mexico, to put together this webinar. I'm sure that it's going to be as successful or even more successful than the other webinars that we have had in the past few months. And I would like to announce that we have agreed with the International Energy Agency to have more webinars in the next few months in order to have a better understanding of the different publications that the International Energy Agency has in regards to energy efficiency. So with that, I pass it on to David again, and thank you so much for your participation. I wish you all the best and a lot of success in this webinar.
Thank you very much, Santiago, for your welcome remarks, and also thanking CENER for your support in organizing these webinars. It's probably worth mentioning that we've done webinars over the last year and this year on energy efficiency policy recommendations and in several sectors, and those are available on the IEA YouTube website, where this presentation will also be available. We also have done another webinar that's been recorded on capturing the multiple benefits of energy efficiency, and that's also available on YouTube for anybody who's interested in. And without further ado, I'll pass on to Tyler to start his presentation on the Energy Efficiency Market Report for 2014.
Thank you very much, David, and welcome everybody. I just wanted to thank everybody again for allowing me to do this in English. I don't speak very much Spanish, so it's very much thank you for that, but we do have ability to read and respond in Spanish. So, and if you have any questions or any comments if I'm talking too fast, please just let us know in the box. So, who am I? Well, I am the project manager of the Energy Efficiency Market Analysis and Report team here at the IEA. The Energy Efficiency Market Report is basically the newest report at the IEA, and it is what we see the IEA kind of transitioning more towards its interest away from, to include more other fuels, for example, other than just oil and natural gas and coal, but to include renewables, energy efficiency. And so that is kind of the first question that we're often asked about the energy efficiency market is what is an energy efficiency market? Why are you evaluating it? What is the point? And so, you know, to quickly or glibly answer that question, I've alluded to it just previously, is that we have market reports for all of the other major fuels around IEA countries and globally. And so the idea was, well, why not do something on energy efficiency, knowing that itself also helps power our modern economies and is a major factor within the global energy system. To illustrate that point, I just wanted to bring up a graph to you. This was in the IEA's World Energy Outlook 2012, and one of the big findings of the World Energy Outlook was that the United States was going to be, you know, import independent, fossil fuel import independent by 2035, and that was a very interesting finding. A lot of people really ran with that, and what they ran with, though, was that with the role of shale gas and shale oil. You can't read about energy or discuss energy in the news without some mention of the role of shale gas and shale oil. But so that purple wedge there is how new discoveries of oil and gas, new reserves being unlocked by shale oil technologies, how they were improving the United States' import situation. But there's a whole other factor that we modeled in the World Energy Outlook, and that was energy efficiency and how that helped the United States become fossil fuel import independent. And that actually, the role of energy efficiency is larger than the role of new supply side options. And this is one of the key points behind the energy efficiency market series, is that energy efficiency can often go unnoticed, but it is an absolutely incredible force within the energy system, and it plays a significant role once we start to account for it over time and over the decades. So, to achieve this kind of energy efficiency, there must have been market behavior. There must have been people, you and I, companies, traders, financiers, bankers, and so forth, that were spending money to improve energy efficiency. And so here is a graph of the largest IEA countries and their total final consumption of energy. So that's the energy consumed in all of the major end-use sectors: transport, residential buildings, commercial buildings, and industry. And what you'll see there is that actually what's interesting is that total final consumption in these major IEA countries hasn't increased very much over the past 4 decades. Why not? Well, one of the major reasons is that energy efficiency, the slow but steady progress of energy efficiency improvements, whether it's moving from those old vehicles that we drove around in the 70s, the old boats, to the new efficient vehicles of today, or it's the old cathode ray tube televisions that took up, you know, your entire living room, now being scaled down to the flat screen TVs, they are having important energy efficiency outcomes. They are allowing us to satisfy our energy service demand with less energy per unit of consumption. And so with the IEA's data, we were able to estimate how much energy that was in fact saving. So what this chart shows is that had the energy efficiency of our goods not improved, but our economies grew, our populations grew, and all the rest stayed the same, then this is how much more energy we would need, and it would be 60% more energy by 2012. And as you can see, energy efficiency is the largest wedge of any one of those fuels, leading the IEA to say that energy efficiency isn't just the hidden fuel, but it is actually the first fuel. It is the most important. With that said, there's still a significant amount of energy efficiency potential left to tap. This goes back to the World Energy Outlook 2012 analysis that the IEA did, and from the first chart that I showed you, and it shows how much energy efficiency potential there exists across some major sectors. And as you can see, the unrealized energy efficiency potential is about 2/3 of the economic potential out to 2035. So the point here is that the market still has significant opportunity to grow and scale and shape and form. So getting to the actual energy efficiency market report then, we wanted to basically understand in relative terms how large the market was. I should actually just take one step back and say that analysis on these energy efficiency markets is very difficult, and it's still very early. There's not a lot of great data out there. It's not like evaluating the oil market. I'm sure a lot of Mexican colleagues on the phone have a lot of interest and expertise on that, but there's market clearing prices, there's volumes of barrels being sold every day, we have good, solid data, we understand the amount of investment and CapEx that's going into that every year. With energy efficiency, it's spread out over millions of transactions happening almost every day on things that people are generally not buying solely for the purpose of energy efficiency. New homes are bought because people need residences, but they're also more energy efficient. So all that to say is that we're still uncovering and we're still discovering what this market really is, and that's the purpose of these first couple market reports. So what we found is, and as Santiago said in the introduction, is that the market is between $310 and $360 billion worldwide. It is the first fuels I just discussed, and that the market is diffuse, extensive, and it is anticipated to grow in the next 5 to 10 years. So what's new in our report this year? Well, we have more robust evaluation. I should say this is the second report. The first one was in 2013, and this is the second one. So we really wanted to refine our analysis. We wanted to come up with better conclusions and more defensible ways to evaluate the market. So we took a number of steps in that respect. The table of contents for the report is, as I just said, we wanted to have a better estimation of the global market. We wanted to track how energy efficiency was improving across the IEA countries, and we have a really solid data set and database that can help us evaluate what the role of energy efficiency is. We want to look at a specific sector. So in the first market report, we looked at information communication technologies, appliances, and lighting. This year, we wanted to look at the energy efficiency market in the transport sector, and it's a huge market there. We'll get into that a little later on. And finally, we wanted to provide a kind of state of play, the state of energy efficiency finance currently. Energy efficiency finance is changing so quickly, and there's so many new developments basically every day that we wanted to just provide you with what's going on currently in this moment. And then finally, we have a second part where we look at about 11 different countries and provide some bottom-up color to our top-down estimates in the first part. So the global energy efficiency market. We employed about, well, 6 different methods using top-down data to estimate what the size of the market was globally. Here's one of the conclusions of one of the methods. We used global changes in energy intensity and some bottom-up data to estimate how much of those energy intensity changes were related to energy efficiency, and then used various energy prices to figure out how much investment was likely happening to improve the energy intensity of the global energy system. Here is a histogram of a Monte Carlo analysis we did that showed over 1,000 iterations what we, under our parameters, what the size of the market probably was. One of the things I wanted to point to is that this histogram is asymmetrical. It is leaning to the larger side than to the smaller side, as you can see. The mean value was about $350 billion. This is up from 2013, in which we estimated it was at $300 billion. So the main point is that it's a huge market. How does it compare to other investments in other fuel types? Well, we think it's the second largest market next to upstream oil and gas. It's larger than renewable electricity generation, which gets a significant amount of discussion and press on the costs of renewable energy investment, but actually energy efficiency, maybe because it is so cost effective and so unnoticeable and such an important and relevant part of the energy system, is that people tend not to concern themselves with the cost of investment. But all that to say is for people interested in the market, there are significant opportunities here to realize returns. Putting the energy efficiency savings in context, the past 10 years the discussion on the global energy system has really been dominated by the role of the rising giants, such as China and in India, emerging economies, even like Mexico. And what we wanted to show was actually energy efficiency was removing the amount of a major economy or a continental energy demand by 2014, as basically it was greater than the energy demand, the final energy demand of the EU. So, just to say that energy efficiency again is serving to dampen the role of emerging economies on fuel prices, on commodity prices, and that kind of thing. Our analysis went back to 1973. If that's too ancient history to you, we then updated our base year to 2001. And we found that if you only accounted for energy efficiency improvements since 2001, since over the past decade, then how much energy savings would you have? You've had about 8% of energy savings in the IEA's largest countries. Cumulatively, this energy efficiency would have saved over 1,700 MTOE over the past 10 years. That's more than the energy demand of Germany and the United States in 2012. We need to look at the impacts now. How do we do this type of analysis? You're probably wondering. How is this black magic conjured? Well, we have a detailed database of energy efficiency indicators, and we can do what's called a decomposition analysis, trying to isolate for the role of energy efficiency and how it is shaping energy demand. So we do a year-on-year tracking of about 18 IEA countries to do this. So what I first wanted to show you is this is total final consumption indexed to 2001 for 18 countries. If we think that total final consumption is a product of all the economic growth that's going on, population growth, it's also a product of how we choose to organize the production in our economies. Are we producing pig iron, or are we insurance agents? How has that changed? That will obviously have important impacts on energy demand. And then finally, how has energy efficiency changed? Those are three factors that we tried to decompose for and isolate on how they were impacting total final consumption. So economic growth and population growth would have added in isolation about 8% to total TFC by 2011. Structural change, that is, the move to less intensive industry or more intensive or larger homes or sport utility vehicles, it's different per sector, that served to reduce energy demand by about 4% by 2011. And then finally, energy efficiency was the largest factor. That was reducing energy demand by about 7%. It was about 2/3 of the explanation for why total final consumption is down by 5% over the past 10 years. Looking at it by country, these are the countries that we were able to review. What you can see is that energy efficiency improvements were greater than economic growth in about 12 of 18 IEA countries. This is interesting and potentially important developments showing that actually economic growth can be decoupled from energy consumption, which is evidently necessary in a lot of the IEA's 2-degree scenarios. Taking a look specifically at transport now, one of the main drivers, obviously, of energy efficiency is policy. Policy makes energy efficiency happen. It happens generally without it, but it doesn't come close to the potential that energy efficiency can have. So what did we find is that 70% of the global new vehicle fleet will be under some type of energy efficiency standard in 2013. Mexico is up there. It's kind of squished between Canada and the United States, which I guess that's kind of an appropriate place for it as one of the NAFTA partners. But all that to say is that 50 million vehicles now being sold worldwide are under an energy efficiency standard, and these energy efficiency standards will improve new vehicle efficiency anywhere between 15% and 60% by 2025. We estimated, I don't go into this to too much detail in the presentation, but we estimate the costs of what this will have and what what impacts this will have on the transport sector and investments in transport generally. Another important part of the market is where will the market be? Where is the investment opportunity for energy efficiency? And it's outside of the OECD generally. As you can see, total transport is growing, but it's basically flat as we project it between 2010 and 2020 in the OECD. All of the global transport growth is being propelled in the non-OECD region. But energy efficiency investment in transport isn't just new efficient vehicles. One of the great pains that we try to make in the report is that energy efficiency is the result of systemic level change as well. We can optimize the efficiency of a system or optimize the efficiency of a vehicle. And here we show the energy consumption per passenger ton-kilometer by mode. As you can see, rail or public transit can move a ton of goods or a person a kilometer at about 1/10 of the energy it needs as a personal vehicle. Therefore, investments in infrastructure that prioritizes rail or transit, we believe, is just as important an energy efficiency investment as it would be in a hybrid vehicle, and that this is going to be very important moving forward. This is something the IEA is very interested in, and we will be publishing on the role of cities in energy efficiency with their planning and transport powers. And that's something, you know, that I have to tip my hat to DFA, which has made significant investments in bus rapid transit and that kind of thing over the past 20 years. I was just there a couple of years ago, and it was very impressive. Energy efficiency finance. Well, what can we say about it? We estimate that the total amount of finance happening for energy efficiency is about $120 billion in 2012. It was difficult for us to really make a final conclusion on energy efficiency because in the writing of that chapter, it was changing so quickly. The amount of efforts to provide financing, but more so for policy and standardization. It seems there are new efforts going on all of the time. Development financing is in the order of $22 billion in 2012. And we basically concluded that energy efficiency finance is moving from niche to an established financial market segment. This was supported by a number of findings. For example, one of the largest commercial property owners in France issued a $700 million bond for energy efficiency that was subscribed 7 times over. You know, their investor interest in energy efficiency is very high right now. But a lot of energy, this is analysis from the World Energy Outlook and the World Energy Investment Outlook. Still, most of the financing for energy efficiency, around 60%, is self-financed. That's people using cash or their own credit cards, that kind of thing. Loans, secured loans come from banks, is the next largest source, and then bonds and equity. The other thing that we did in this chapter is we tried to get a good handle on the energy service company market. We counted over 30 billion of market sizes for energy service companies around the world, China being by far the largest. But it's interestingly, energy service company markets are propping up everywhere. There's some interesting places such as Ukraine, Russia, Croatia, and so on and so forth. I'd be interested to hear about what's going on in Mexico as well. Looking very quickly at the country case studies, here's the countries that we did evaluate this year. We had a focus on OECD countries and then countries in Asia. So China. It's hard to talk about energy efficiency in Asia or energy efficiency generally without looking to China. They are an incredible story on how much energy they have saved from energy efficiency efforts there. As you can see, energy efficiency savings were about over 200 million tons of oil equivalent with their 11th 5-year plan, and they invested over 120 billion in that over that 5 years. They've scaled up investment again to over 200 billion in this current 5-year plan and are expected to save a similar amount of energy. China's been doing this through energy service companies, as I just showed. You know, just a lot of interest and potential in China still for energy efficiency. The European Union, they're another leader. The European Union, in fact, just this year reduced their energy intensity by about 5.5%, a huge improvement in 2014. The EU's new energy efficiency directive should see significant new potential being untapped, or potential being tapped, I should say, going up to 2030. And we think this is going to be one of the leaders in the energy efficiency space. I should say that the World Investment Outlook estimates that the United States, China, and the EU will comprise over 2/3 of the energy efficiency investment globally. And one of the interesting areas we looked at was just specifically at LED lighting. And this basically is the picture of exponential growth, both in Thailand and Japan. The important points here is that Thailand, Japan, obviously two countries with different development curves or different places along the development curve, but still were able to roll out essentially the same level of growth for LED lighting in their countries. Obviously, Japan had a lot more absolute lighting numbers, but it's a huge success story. So that was 2014. I'm currently furiously working on finalizing the market report 2015. We're anticipating to launch that report in October. The main areas of research and findings will be in the buildings energy efficiency market, which is one of the largest markets for energy efficiency in the world. And we do a lot of analysis on where that market is going to go up to 2020. We look at what's happening with electricity demand and utilities generally. Energy efficiency is serving to significantly reduce the growth of electricity demand, and that is impacting utilities' business models, their balance sheets, and how they are responding to energy efficiency with the new opportunities that it provides. We're looking at policy and market developments in the latest year. You know, you can't talk about energy efficiency without talking about the impact of lower energy prices. We believe that actually policy is going to provide a very important backstop, especially in the transport sector, as I just showed you with all of the energy efficiency standards, to really mitigate the role that low oil prices will have on investment. We look at how energy efficiency actually improves the energy security of countries and reduces absolute imports. As I mentioned earlier, we look at cities and their role to improve energy efficiency. We look at major energy producers like Russia and Saudi Arabia, Mexico even, actually, in the next bullet, and how they are increasingly looking to energy efficiency, because even though you have huge energy reserves, energy efficiency has very attractive value proposition to you. And then finally, we look at Mexico and other Latin American, well, Brazil as well, other Latin American countries to kind of pivot our analysis towards Latin America.
Thanks, Tyler. I'll probably just add a bit about some of the work we've been doing on the Mexico chapter. As you all know, Mexico is one of the leading countries in energy efficiency investment in Latin America. The energy efficiency policy is addressed through the Mexico's National Program for Sustainable Energy Use for 2014-2018, which sets the strategies and actions for energy efficiency at national level for all sectors. There's also the Law for Renewable Energy Use and Energy Transition Financing, which provides most of the funding for energy efficiency projects in Mexico. Based on our research, and we've been looking extensively, and as Tyler mentioned, it's not easy to capture all the numbers that are going into energy efficiency, but from 2013 to 2014, the total investment in energy efficiency through direct government financing was worth at least 869 million pesos. And the international development agencies provided funding and financing worth more than 400 million Mexican pesos, just to give an idea. And I think that concludes our presentation. I don't see any questions at the moment. Maybe we'll give you a couple of minutes, but we'd really appreciate to hear from you and get some of your questions. So regarding the energy efficiency market, any questions you have on be anything you can share on the energy efficiency market in Mexico, particularly regarding ESCOs or transportation would also be great for everybody. So we'll just give you a couple of minutes to write your questions through the question pane, and hopefully we'll have some more time with you just now. Okay, we've got some questions. So first question we have from George Borbola. What can we expect as enterprises from the study, a national survey? How can we or are we expected to help?
Well, I'm very glad that people are offering to help. I don't know if you're offering or if you're being expected to help. But anyways, that's good news for us. One of the key limitations that we have is as I alluded to at the beginning of the report, is the limitations of data. So a lot of our work is based on getting people on the phone, talking with them, understanding how your businesses or your business models are prioritizing or using energy efficiency investment. So, for example, I've been in multiple discussions and conversations with electricity utilities lately in the OECD and outside of the OECD to figure out how much they are investing in energy efficiency and what they think the future is. So we usually go through national bureaucracies, national agencies, and we would look to actually have links there between the national agency and private enterprise to get a better sense of what's going on in energy efficiency, say, for example, in Mexico.
Thanks, Tyler. The next question we have is from Angel Susteta. Have you determined the additional percentage impact in energy efficiency in countries that have decoupling regulation in place? And if so, what is it?
That's a really interesting question, actually, and we haven't, but we're looking at it right now. So that's great minds think alike, I guess. But we're looking at countries right now that have peak energy demand legislation, and we're trying to model what the impact of that will be on energy efficiency. I would say that the countries that have decoupling legislation tend to perform better on energy efficiency, but that's not a blanket statement or anything like that. It's just something that we've noticed. But we can do energy efficiency progress for a number of IEA countries, and this is definitely an area that we're looking into, peak energy demand.
Thank you, Tyler. Then we're now getting a lot of questions, so going to the next one, which will be, what are the most important challenges for energy efficiency in Mexico, particularly? We've been looking at the energy efficiency market in Mexico. There's several regulations and significant financing in place, but it's very much a government-led, which is good in a way. But we feel definitely that there's a challenge in terms of getting the private sector more involved, and in some cases also getting the local banks. Is very much led by government agencies. You've got NAFIN or even international development agencies involved, but still the private sector hasn't been motivated enough to be involved in energy efficiency. There's other than specific sector issues. One that Scenario has been looking at carefully is the enforcement of energy building codes, and that's one major challenge. Of course, also growing capacity from the ESCO market, which is still not there in Mexico, but it's gradually growing as well. So there's a wide range of challenges, and hopefully you'll be able to see what we've highlighted in our report in the next energy efficiency market report for 2015. I'm just checking the next couple of questions that have been coming through. I'll try to answer most of them. So a lot of questions are to do with Mexico. Sorry, just going through some of the questions. There's one question here on energy efficiency finance. What's the most important challenge to improve a specific program or policy in order to improve energy efficiency finance?
Ooh, you could write a whole report. Whole reports have been written on that. There isn't one specific challenge. One of the issues that I don't know if this is the most important challenge, but it's one of the things that I'm interested in, is just creating confidence in the marketplace for the products. You know, we know that energy efficiency performs. We know that it's cost effective. It has a ton of other multiple benefits that make it a very attractive investment and can create very attractive returns. It's just, it's new and investors are unfamiliar with it, and therefore there's a great need for standardizing and institutionalizing energy efficiency. And so there's a number of efforts going on around the world to try and create that confidence through standardization. I think that'll be one of the things, one of the main developments over the next 5 years. And then the other one that is just, you know, it's no secret, but the issue of bundling, getting to well, either understanding what financial mechanisms can work with disaggregated market like individual residential homes, individual consumers, and what works with big industrial large projects. The real key unknown in my opinion is how can finance bridge that gap and make the small projects like energy efficient appliances or new installation and that kind of thing, can it bundle and scale up into an investment grade product? And I don't know, but I think that's one of the main challenges as well.
Yeah, probably I'd add to that in terms of energy efficiency finance, in terms of policy and programs that the governments can include, is a lot of building capacity of the local banks to be financing energy efficiency. There's a lot, particularly in Latin America, as I've been working there over the last couple of months. There's a lot of risk aversion, so a lot of caution from banks when they see energy efficiency projects. There's high risk involved, and so therefore the interest rates and the cost of investing or getting a loan for energy efficiency are quite high. So if there's any way of a policy or program that can sort of address that risk aversion for energy efficiency is definitely important. And there's a number of other challenges which are standard, I think. There's, I think we can answer a couple of other questions. There's one here on the ESCO market. Is it necessary in ESCO market to develop an energy efficiency sector? That's a very good question, I think.
Kind of what comes first, the chicken, the ESCO market, or the sector? Yes. You know, actually, I don't know. That's a really interesting question. I haven't been asked a question like that before. I think that getting the policy framework right, with defined property rights, as David was saying, with institutional investors being comfortable and that kind of thing, I think that is basically the market. If we can develop solid payback periods where people are confident that the energy efficiency investments will happen, there's recourse for all parties, there is shared risk amongst all parties through legal mechanisms and policy frameworks that don't generally even have anything to do with energy efficiency, then the ESCOs themselves can realize that opportunity. once that happens, then the market can tend to take off. We have a chapter right now that we're going to be releasing on Russia, and for example, they greatly supported ESCOs deploying in the 2000s, but didn't have those enabling institutional superstructure like solid property rights, recourse auditing, certification, and that kind of thing. And it was tough going, actually, to get the ESCOs off the ground. It's not just promoting ESCOs and providing them with seed funding and that kind of thing. It's really very much so about the apparatus under which they operate. So I guess I would say, yeah, you got to have the market first.
Yeah, I totally agree with Tyler. You need to build the capacity of the market, get the market interested, and then the ESCO market will gradually grow sort of naturally. It's difficult to just get the ESCO market running right from the beginning, but they're definitely important, because just relying on the normal energy services, individual people with capacity, will only get you so far. The ESCO markets actually, and the ESCOs can really address a wider range of energy efficiency issues, and that's really important, I think. I'm just reading some other questions. I think we'll just another one or two. There's a question on the future of market in Mexico in terms of sustainable buildings, and that's an area that's been addressed in the next market report, and there's definitely an area of interest, and there's as you saw that initial graph, the building sector is the sector that has more potential for energy efficiency, and where there's more to be done. And particularly in Mexico, I think the ministry is trying to address that, and CONUE, through the enforcement of energy building codes, introducing standards not only for appliances, but also standards for materials, so the building envelope, the whole building. And I think that's very important for Mexico. But then, again, the challenge is then enforcing a lot of these regulations at municipal level, and monitoring the compliance. So there's definitely a number of challenges for Mexico there, but definitely a key sector. Mm-hmm. I think that's it. We've got a number of questions, but unfortunately we don't have time to answer all of them. A lot of the questions are to do with Mexico, which in some cases we've gotten knowledge following the chapter that we've done on Mexico.
Leads me to believe we should maybe have a follow-up session after we release the report in October.
Yeah, I think so. We can do an Energy Efficiency Market Report 2015 webinar. I think that would be great.
Talk more closely about Mexico.
I think that'd be great. Yeah, again, if you have any particular questions that you'd like to ask, there are emails over there, and please feel free to email us, and we'll try to reply over the next couple of days. And also, before I end the webinar, I'd like to thank you for your attention and participation in today's webinar. The presentation should be available next week on the IEA's YouTube website, and I'll make sure that we'll be sending you a link with my colleague Anna Lepore, and please feel free to share that link with your colleagues and friends. For us, it's been a real pleasure to conduct this webinar, which we hope you found useful. We'd also like to thank SENER and Anna Lepore for all their support in helping us organize these webinars. As Santiago mentioned, we'll continue to organize other webinars on a regular basis, and we will make sure to keep you informed about the next webinars that we'll be doing on energy efficiency. Again, please do not hesitate to contact us, and if you have any questions. Gracias. Thank you. Buenos días.
Thank you.